Commonwealth of Virginia in response to the COVID-19 pandemic and to protect the public health and safety of our panel members, staff, and the general public. Today's meeting is being held electronically via Zoom. These electronic meetings are required to complete essential business on behalf of our region. Per the requirements of the Code of Virginia, we posted a meeting agenda and supporting documentation on the HRTPO website for public review. We also provide electronic copies of this information to our panel members and other interested parties. Today's meeting is being live streamed and is available for viewing on the Regional Connection YouTube channel. And as you just heard a little bit ago, please note the meeting is also being recorded and will be available after the meeting through our website. Members of the public were invited to submit comments via email or phone call. I can report that no public comments were received within 48 hours of today's meeting. Just a few housekeeping rules. Ask everybody stay on mute until we call on you for input. And also, if you do, we take any votes today, they will need to be done via roll call. When it comes to your time for input, if you could please not only state your name, but of course who you represent, that will be incredibly helpful. So we're up to 52 participants. What I'd like to do is go ahead and get us started. Now, I'm going to, I think at this point, you're all into 1 year of electronic remote meetings. And when we have a transit advisory panel of 67 members, your first 3 meetings, you were very patient with me as I called that roll call. If I don't hear any major objections from Stephanie Gorham or from Robert Bowen or other people I'm seeing there, I'm going to forego the roll call today of 67 RTAP members. We have you all listed on participants. Does that sound okay, Sarah Jane? So, all right. I didn't think I'd get any complaints of that, because really what we'd like to jump to today is this is when I think the fun part starts. So as you're all aware, we, through this RTAP, identified a number of issues, a number of topic areas related to public transit in Hampton Roads. And you all formed a series of 9 work groups around those topic areas. Just as a reminder, those topic areas that you form work groups around were transit-oriented development along the regional backbone network, affordable and accessible housing, bus stop amenities, transit advocacy ambassadors, transit in the military, serving major employment centers, transit for the Williamsburg, Virginia Beach Tourism Corridor, technology, and university and colleges. You're going to hear the first set of report outs today from those work groups. We're going to start today with our serving major employment centers work group. They're going to go first. They're going to be followed by transit and the military. The first presentation will be led by Bill Crow from the Virginia Ship Repair Association, representing the major employment centers. We're going to have the CEOs from our 2 major military bases, Naval Station Norfolk, Captain Dees, and from Yorktown Naval Weapons Station, we're going to have Captain Schneider. They're going to lead the presentations on the transit and the military. And then we also have our affordable accessible housing group that is prepared for their report out today as well. So 3 of our 9 groups will provide report outs today. So what we'd like to do is we're going to give each group up to 15 minutes to report their recommendations, their thoughts, their conversations. But then what we're really looking for is the engagement of this RTAP, questions about the ideas. How could we further these ideas? Any additional considerations? That conversation is really what's going to be valuable through this process. So if that sounds like a plan, Bill Crow, I'm going to turn it over to you, sir, if you wouldn't mind unmuting. And I'm prepared to share screen here and call up your PowerPoint. And we'll go ahead and we'll get this started. So Bill, I have it up on the screen here. Hopefully that
there we go.
Everything come up there okay?
Yeah, everybody can see the whole, see the presentation, right? Can I get a thumbs up? Just okay, good.
Everybody good? Everybody seeing that okay? All right. Bill, why don't I turn it over to you? I'll drive and click for you. Let me know when you need to advance, and we'll get to it.
Okay. First off, for those of you who don't know me or have we've not met yet, I look forward to meeting each and every one of you. But I'm Bill Crow, president of the Virginia Ship Repair Association. A little background on me, which I was kind of torn between the military group and getting people to the major military bases across the region, because I spent 30 years in the Navy on both those bases, and but in the job that I'm in now and things that we're doing, I ended up going and serving the Major Employment Centers Working Group. We have met several times over the last, since our last meeting, and you can see our group membership that's there. Sean Avery is he's president of the Hampton Roads Workforce Council, which is also marrying up with the Peninsula Workforce Council, which I think will then be the regional council. Of course, me, and then you got Kurt from Centera, Brad from Clark Design, Bob McKenna from Peninsula Chamber, Brian from Hampton Roads Chamber, Bryant Thomas from CHKD, and Michelle Walker from Newport News Shipbuilding. In regards to that, and looking at it, the guiding philosophy, as you know, which just as a reminder, we need to make sure that we are staying at the tip of the spear, so to speak, with regards to our metropolitan areas, in regards to jobs and economic growth, and that we are able to adequately and properly move folks. And I think that we can see, if any of you all were out traveling over this last weekend, with us being spooled somewhat out of COVID and continuing to spool out of COVID, my wife and I were out at the beach, actually on the beachfront this week, and a huge amount of traffic all over the place, no matter where you were, and I think we're going to see that. So the more that we have the ability to use public transportation to connect folks with where they work or where they might want to go, would be a huge benefit, and will also allow us, as we said, to grow economically and grow in regards to our jobs and our capacities and capabilities here in Hampton Roads. Our work group basically had 3 recommendations for consideration. I'll kind of hit the waves top to them, and please, anyone who is on the call here, if I fail to mention something, please unmute yourself and provide anything that I may have missed as I hit the wave tops of those things that we talked about. In regards to the major employment centers and looking at them, we sort of singled up, well, I would say we tripled up on kind of 3 recommendations that you'll see here. First off, in looking at it, and there may be others, and I'm sure that there are, but in centering up on it, where are some of those major employment centers? And we, as I say, we tripled up on kind of the 3 that I will discuss with you today. Healthcare center, as you say, as we all know, with regards to EVMS, Children's Hospital, and the healthcare center in Norfolk, and with Centera, and the huge heart hospital that exists over around the bend from here in downtown Norfolk, a huge amount of folks are actually going there each and every day to and from there. Okay, I think it's without doubt, and we can all completely say that it is becoming truly that epicenter. The problem with it is, and what we discussed and what was discussed, and of course, Brian's on here, and he can, excuse me, Brian, okay, from Children's Hospital's King's Daughter, he was kind of the leader in this one. But the biggest problem is that, yeah, you may be able to jump on the tide out at Newtown Road and ride it downtown, but where it puts you out is not an extremely convenient place for those who would be working across the healthcare campus that exists down around the bend, as I said. So it does not stop in the right place, so it's really not an ideal place for stopping and getting people to and from work. Okay, and then the other thing that was discussed there, the last bullet, is there is a green space that is over at EVMS, and we'll show you the map of that here in just a second, that we could actually convert over. If you look at the epicenter of where we are, you can see all of the facilities that are there, that exist right there in a huge, in a very, very small acreage, and in very close proximity with one another. Okay, so definitely is an epicenter, and is continuing to grow as time goes on. And then the bus location, if you were to center down and single up on that, right there by the Brickell Library, I think it is, and some other places, there is a green space that would kind of be laid over, if you were to do the overlay, would be somewhat in the center, which would make it much more conducive for people to use the public transportation if the routes were to end up dropping off there. And allowing people to go into the various facilities that exist in our medical epicenter that we've got. The one thing in regards to that is that when we look at where we are with this, we had to kind of back this up. And I will close with that one as I go there of making sure that, okay, you can have all the bus routes running there you want to, but how do you get people to quit driving their cars? I wouldn't say to quit driving their cars, but to be, more, to make it more attractive for people not to drive their cars, but to get on buses and to get on mass transportation to move themselves so that we're not on the roads, we're not clogging up the roads as we've, we in Hampton Roads have done and are now continuing to do, which was proven to me last weekend. So, again, that's our first recommendation is one of the epicenters being the and the movement of people would be the medical center here in Norfolk. Going to the next one, okay. Where's another huge epicenter and being president of the Virginia Ship Repair Association, Newport News Shipbuilding. They pay my salary, so God knows I love them. Or they help pay my salary. Many companies do that. But Newport News Shipbuilding, as we all know, the largest public or private employer in the state of Virginia, well over 20,000 employees, large parking lot areas that you see there that are taking up massive amounts of acreage. And again, looking at that and being able to move that many people, if we could figure out and break the code on it, it would be huge in regards to having an option for a mode of transportation, basically from all over the region, because just knowing the demographics. And Michelle, if you're on here and you want to say anything, or if you have anything to add, please do, because this is certainly your bailiwick. But and it's your, it's your geography over there. So the transit, in regards to it, if we can move that many people, we're really moving some people, and we're taking a heck of a lot of traffic off the roads. Okay.
Yes. So. Go
ahead.
Sorry, I was muted. We currently have a contract with HRT, but it's only 1,200 passes that we're using. And right now with COVID, it's kind of put some restrictions on us. So there's only roughly 800 people that use the HRT transportation system right now, out of 20,000 employees, and 70% of those being on first shift. The biggest complaints that we get back is because of where the locations are of, either the HRT routes, or, there's not parking rides or things, or it's not convenient for where the people live. So by expanding the HRT system, that dramatically helps our business and helps the employees utilize the system. And then it helps the shipyard by reducing, the parking capacity issues that we have currently.
Right. Right. And the other thing about it is just knowing the demographics of all the shipyards around here. All of our workforce comes from everywhere, all over the place around here. So it's not like, you would, those 20,000 live Virginia Beach, Chesapeake, Portsmouth, Pocosin, all over the place. And that's something that would have to be worked on as we back out of this thing and figure out how we're going to get it to succeed. So, and Brian, I didn't really, from Children's Hospitals King Dollars, I didn't give you a chance. Anything you wanted to say about the epicenter?
No, I think you hit all the high points well, Bill. It's really all about connectivity, making sure that we are getting the employees where they need to get in those dense employment centers. It's also important to keep into consideration getting our patients there too, and their families, and making sure that folks have access to the healthcare center as well.
Right.
Bill, could we also, I know Kurt Hoffelick is on from Centera. And Kurt, I know.
Oh, I'm sorry, Kurt. I didn't mean to. I just was.
No, absolutely. Kurt, I know this is one you felt passionate about as well. Would you mind layering on to what Bill had to say?
Oh, sure. Happy to. Yeah, we think that as light rail evolves, it's a kind of natural progression to bring the stop up onto the campus. And as we continue to develop closer and closer relationships between, the academic hospitals, Eastern Virginia Medical School, and, some of the engineering and development programs at ODU, having that synergy between the ODU campus on light rail and the medical center will be critical as well, because we envision in the future a lot of partnerships developing around advancements of engineering and biotech and other commercial spin-offs that evolve once you start putting up powerful health systems like Centera, CHKD, EVMS, and ODU together into strategic alignment. So that corridor all the way there between ODU, the medical campus, and the light rail, I think is going to be critical for that.
Thank you, Kurt. Bill, I'll go ahead and
Okay, and then the last one is, we're running up on the end of our time here. One of the things that we looked at were the Southside Shipyards, which is also a major employment center, which any of you who don't know, if you drive across the Berkeley Bridge, for your awareness, the entire cluster of the largest capacity of ship repair in the United States exists along the Berkeley Bridge in regards to conventional surface ship repair for the United States Navy. It's a major employment center. If you ever drive through the Berkeley neighborhood, you will see cars parked absolutely everywhere. There are huge parking challenges. And the other problem with it is that you usually, the folks that are coming in there to work, whether they be subcontractors or actually working for the prime contractors over there, there's usually a pretty good hike that they have to do in regards to the parking challenges of them getting to where they need to be. So as it says, well, the last thing there in regards to it, Bob, if you'll go back one, that I've actually met with our board of directors, and we're meeting again this afternoon, because I think there was, we discussed this as our last board meeting, of looking to the south side and figuring out how we can enhance transportation there to eliminate parking, to free up space, to allow more expansion of the capability and capacity of repairing our United States Navy, Coast Guard, and maritime ships. So we will continue to discuss that. And if you look at what brought this to bear as our kind of our last recommendation, Bob, going to the next slide. If you see the pink line, okay, that's kind of the layout of Hampton Roads there, where Bob's pointer is right there. That's the Berkeley Bridge. And if you see where it runs across into Berkeley, it just runs straight through and there are no stops. If you look over at Berkeley along the waterfront, what you will find on that side is that right around that area, there is the complete cluster of all the repair facilities that exist. So if you were to take and expand expand that route, to move people in and around and to drop them close to in proximity to where they would be. And as Michelle said for Newport News, figuring out the hours, figuring out the numbers, we could certainly end up, moving a lot of people from various places. And then backing this out, Bob, and I'll be quiet, is the thing about it is that when you back it out is, okay, that's all great in regards to the end point. How do you get them there from the beginning point? And, the one of the things that I discussed with our board of directors is, and William, I know you're on the call, but is how do we crunch the data to make sure we get it right? Because you can do anything you want to do and try to set up a plan, but if your data is skewed, or you don't, you don't have your locations right, we'll be running a lot of transportation and maybe not max utility in regards to the user. So I think we can get there, and we also discussed some park and ride places and some other things with regards to it. That being said, I'll be quiet. Bob, does anybody else from the group have anything you would like to add? I did not want to make sure everybody gets to speak.
Bill, if it'd be okay, what I'd like to do is maybe call on Brad Martin, who really brought this last item up on our work group. Brad, are you on with us to talk about the park and ride locations and the large commercial parking lots?
I am, Bob. Thanks, and good job, Bill. One of the things we talked about as far as park and ride, and Bill was just getting into it, was the first mile, final mile, where we're, quite frankly, pushing a ball of spaghetti uphill, trying to get people in Hampton Roads to disconnect from their cars, and we're also relying on our cars. And one way to do that is not necessarily build a whole bunch of new park and ride locations. There's a good one in Virginia right at the split where South Independence and Holland split around that Wawa, and there's a nice park and ride location there. But we were interested in an action item maybe for this larger group is to go out and approach some of the existing underutilized parking lots that are already out there. We talked specifically on Virginia Beach Boulevard about the Sam's Club and Harris Teeter and Home Depot that's right there. There's a good there of the Military Highway where Janeth is. One of the benefits of the Janeth is I think there are like 12 or 18 Tesla charging stations there. So all the people driving their new Teslas can come in the morning and plug them up and then take a bus or other mode of transportation into their office. And we really want to engage with the different chambers and the other retail groups to talk to some of their big box stores, smaller box stores, and even some landlords to look at some opportunities where some of these underutilized parking lots could be used as really gathering points for these multimodal and new public transportation options. It's certainly a benefit, we think, to the retail businesses, because if your car in the Home Depot parking lot, you got to run in and get some duct tape and some PVC pipe or something. You'll obviously do that right as you're getting off the bus and getting ready to get into your car. So we think that there are a lot of opportunities where we can drive some real collaboration with our retail partners and other landlord situations where we could really create a network of new opportunities for these park and rides.
Great. Well, Bill Crow, as always, thank you, sir, and Brad and Kurt and Brian. I appreciate your comments there. I'm going to stop share a second just to get everybody back up on the screen. What I'd like to do right now, Bill, is really open it up to the full Regional Transit Advisory Panel. So you heard 4 ideas there, serving the healthcare epicenter. You heard ideas about Newport News Shipbuilding, the Southside Shipyards, and even the park and ride opportunities that Brad mentioned. Why don't we pause there and see what conversation there is. Any questions? Anybody like the ideas? Anybody have questions about it?
Bob, this is William Harrell. I just want to say it's an exciting time to be involved in transit with this level of business leadership coalescing around these issues. I had the opportunity to participate in the last meeting of the major employment group. So we are taking copious notes. We've already started looking into some of the recommendations. Certainly more park and rides make a lot of sense. The fact that, you know, as of October of 22, having the opportunity to beginning on the peninsula with 15-minute service and working to the south side in 23, FY23 and 24. Providing 15-minute service truly is a game changer for this region. As most of you are aware at this point, this region has never had a dedicated funding source for public transportation. So we essentially piece together a regional system working with our 6-member cities. So the fact that we will have the ability to have a backbone system that was part of that last map that you saw, I think really gives us an opportunity to significantly improve transit service for the transit dependent, while also, I think with those 15-minute windows, having the ability to increase ridership with choice riders. So it's an exciting time. There's a lot of information. What I would suggest, at least from our standpoint, Bob, is that, you know, we take in the recommendations and then we can be in a position to come back out with specific recommendations. I know we're initiating conversations with Newport News Ship and others So there is some ongoing work that we'd like to report out to this group at a later time.
Yeah, absolutely, William. And I know you'll have to take all of these ideas and take a look at them and consider, and then we can circle back. But I think that's a good path, William. RTAP members, any questions or thoughts? Could I call on our friends from the chat? Oh, I'm sorry, Amy. Amy, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that I really appreciated the comments that were being made about the epicenter in Norfolk. And as we're doing our redesign and looking at the frequent service there on Hampton Boulevard, all day 15-minute service that really will connect ODU, EVMS down to the light rail station. So, I think that would be our first step forward. Knowing that we've explored light rail options on that side of the city previously, and that might not be probably won't be our next step forward with light rail, but certainly having improved frequent transit service and potentially maybe dedicated transit sometime in the future, I think will really be our great opportunity for improving that connectivity. So I really appreciate that, and we'll be in touch because we'll be following up as we complete our redesign work coming up very soon and over the summer.
Right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Amy. Anyone else?
This is Angie.
Hey, Angie.
Hi. I love the park and ride notion. I was introduced to that actually when I lived briefly up in southern New Jersey, and they did it sort of in between each side of the interstate, in the median, and people would park in there and get on the buses going to the various places. And so, to their point about these big box stores having all this space, and you see in some, down on Laskin Road area, they've actually built out, shopping and all of that into the parking lots, but there's still a lot of space in a lot of areas that people could probably easily get or more easily get to if they don't own a vehicle. Somebody could, drive them a short distance closer to where they live. And if we create a shelter or something that will accommodate as they're waiting, I just think that's an excellent idea on every level that we're looking at.
Thanks, Angie. Zakia, I know that you had a comment in the chat about the park and rides. Did you want to add anything to that?
Nothing to add specifically, but I think it's just a great resource of any kind of empty lots or underutilized lots that we have. I think in general, trying to figure out creative ways for all of those kind of abandoned spaces throughout the region is just really helpful. So I definitely think that'd be a great utilization of what we're doing with our parking rides. I'm from Atlanta, where parking ride is also very common, especially going to the airport and such. So definitely a huge proponent of that for sure.
So if I could call on our chamber friends, Bob McKenna, I know you were at the last meeting. Brian Stevens, you were in several of the meetings. One of the things we talked about is how do we get to the property managers, owners that talk about opportunities? And Bob, you maybe said that the chambers could maybe help us in a convening role with not only HRT, but WADA also. Did you want to talk about that a little?
Yes, so I'd like to convene a separate discussion with William Harrell and WADA and Terry Benez up at the Williamsburg Chamber and potentially some of the economic development departments. Offline, I will get with William and Terry and talk about this idea. Now, I've been driving around the peninsula since our last conversation, looking at all potential parking lots that could be used. So yeah, I'd like to convene that up here for the peninsula, and I'll be in touch with you too, Bob.
Thank you, Bob. And Brian Stevens, if you're on, we'd love to be able to partner with you on the south side, perhaps, or in your footprint as well, Brian.
No, consider it done, Bob. I've talked to William. We can do the same thing here on the south side and support that initiative.
That's fantastic, because I think the idea there, this could really be a win-win for everybody.
No question. Bob, one thing that I know we discussed briefly in some of our working groups was the transportation requirements relative to the offshore wind industry. I know we're just starting to analyze that, but I got to believe that all the jobs that that's going to create, we need to be looking from a transportation perspective. How do we get these workers to where they need to go out to 27 miles off the coast and build those 200 wind turbines and then subsequently maintain them. So just again, I think that's something that we need to keep our eye on.
Thank you, Brian. I saw a question, and if please don't hesitate to jump in if I miss anybody's chat. That will you get copies of the presentations? Yes, we'll get all these PowerPoints out to you. So before we move on to military and transit, anything else on major employment centers? It sounds like we have a couple of great opportunities there. Bill Crow, I'm sure you'll be coordinating with William about discussions with your board and what those opportunities are. And looks like our chambers, William, we're willing to be conveners to discuss those parking lot opportunities for park and ride. Anything else anybody wanted to add?
Just real quickly to sum up, I want to really appreciate Brian for bringing up the wind turbines, because we think about these employment centers and they're all so heavily infrastructured already, with all of the parking lots that are already at the various shipbuilding places and even CHKD and the hospital centers. But when you have a situation like that where we are going to have a brand new industry and a brand new need come, it really makes these challenges acute, and we've really got to think outside the box. So Brian, thank you for bringing that very specific example up. It's something we need to deal with.
I did pass over, and I apologize. Mary Mathena, I saw you had a comment about the tide stops. You like the idea of extending the tide to various campuses. Did you want to speak to that a bit? I just want to, and I apologize if I overlooked your
That's
text.
okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. I think what happened with the tide stops is that you're dealing with an area that has already been developed for a long time. And so they tried to blend the stops in. They had to fit them in somewhere. And I think that's why sometimes they're not practical, because the area was already developed and they had to find a place to put them. Now, like if you're talking about the one at Harbor Park, of course, that one is great. But a lot of there are other ones around the downtown area that, they just had to fit in somewhere. So, but I like the idea of extending the tide into campuses and, various locations so that people would be, tempted to use it more.
Thank you, Mary. Anything else anybody wanted to bring up?
Alert from Newport to everyone calling with your visit.
Diana Burke, I see you had a chat. Do you want to touch on that related to the resort in the town center area?
Yes, sir. And I just want to thank everyone. That was an excellent report, and it helped me to understand the region a bit better. I would be remiss if I just didn't say a word about tourism, because of course that's a huge sector that we're trying to fulfill. And I know William and HRT and everyone's working diligently to try and get faster, more reliable service. We're trying to be as patient as we can, but I just want to let you know it's a huge problem, of course, making sure that our employees don't sit on the bus for 2 hours. And I know there's a plan in place. It's just, of course, never going to happen fast enough for us. So I just wanted to make, I guess, an annotation or comment about tourism as it being a vital industry. Thank you.
Thank you, Diana. And at a later meeting, you're going to hear a report out from the Williamsburg and Virginia Beach tourism corridor. Brian Stevens, if you're still on, Brian, I know you had raised comments about our service industry and our hotel and restaurant workers. And do you want to expand on that just a little? Because I think that follows up on what Diana's comment was, but I know you've mentioned this issue.
No, that's one of the things that I consistently talk about in support of Diane and the entire hospitality and tourism industry, especially at the beach. You know, the many of the workers in the hotels and restaurants and entertainment venues literally live in Suffolk and Chesapeake and other municipalities, and they've got to go to the beach every single day, and many of them don't have cars. I've heard stories where it takes some of those employees up to 2 hours to get to work and 2 hours to get back home, and sometimes they can't even get home because of the the timing of the bus stops and et cetera. And so it's just something I think we need to collectively look at. I know William does. William and I have talked about it. William's concerned about it. But again, we need to support that industry. There's challenges right now just finding workers. So if we can get workers employed there, then we need to provide transportation for them to get there as well.
Absolutely. And if I could jump in, yes, that's we certainly have done significant outreach with the hospitality group down at the beach. And one of the upcoming recommendations is, in fact, we will be implementing as part of our new budget a new max route to get hotel workers to the beach quicker. And I'm going to ask Mr. Ray Amoruso to speak to that. We're also going to reduce the fare on that particular route to mirror what normal bus riders pay rather than the higher fare for max routes. Mr. Amoruso, could you speak to that, please?
Sure, Mr. Harrell, and good afternoon, everyone. Working with the folks out of the oceanfront, I very much enjoyed working with them. We heard loud and clear, oh, my video's not on. We heard loud and clear the need to help them better distribute the workers up and down the oceanfront. So the max route 960, which currently ends at Arctic at 19th, its route pattern is going to be modified to extend all the way up to 31st Alaskan Road before it makes a return trip to downtown Norfolk. In addition to that, we're also modifying the route max 960 to provide connectivity directly into the Virginia Beach Town Center. And then in addition to that, the complaint we heard is that the hotel workers and restaurant workers would like to see, because it saves nearly an hour from end to end from downtown Norfolk to Virginia Beach, the max route does, that we charge a local bus fare. And so we're bringing in front of the commission in July the recommendation to reduce the max 960 fare to a local bus fare so that people don't have to ride the Route 20, which stops pretty much every 3 or 4 blocks and takes an hour and 45 minutes from end to end, and can use the max route instead at 45 minutes and get out to their jobs. So we're really excited about that. That'll be going into place in the fall as part of our October service changes. That's about it for the max 960.
Hey, thank you, Ray. Appreciate that, the update for everybody. Any questions for Ray while we have his expertise on the screen? Okay. All right. Well, first off, Major Employment Work Group, thank you. Excellent report. Appreciate everybody's engagement and participation. Why don't we move on to our next group for today? Our next report out is going to come from the representatives of the Military and Transit Work Group. Captain Dees, Captain Snyder, I believe you're both on the screen. If I could turn it over to you, I'll share screen and ask if you could run through. I'll drive the PowerPoint for you.
Sure, thanks, Bob. Hey, Dave Dees here. I am on a phone as backup, but hopefully you can also hear me. Can you hear me fine there?
Yes, we can, sir.
Okay, gotcha. So we're the Regional Transportation Advisory Panel for Military and Transit Working Group. Can you go to the next slide, please?
There you go.
Yeah, I'm Dave Dees, but Jason Snyder as well from the Naval Weapons Station, Yorktown, and I'm the XO currently of Norfolk, and eventually I'll be the CO there. Rick Dreyer from the Hampton Roads Military and Federal Facility Alliance, and then Amy Inman from the City of Norfolk. And that was our group. We do appreciate all the support from many other people who called in to us and provided a great deal of guidance as we had our various meetings. Now, the two main meetings we had, the first one we discussed some of the challenge and opportunity. We really looked at the transit plans and we viewed some of the old personnel surveys. Key with this, and I'll go into our recommendation later, is the date you can see of that survey being roughly 10 years old and the need for us really to refresh that. The second one, we talked about the light rail expansion, and really we were just kind of getting a little better dive into the materials. We tried to talk on the challenges of how do we make with either light rail expansion or any transit expansion to the base successful. And in both of these, both Captain Schneider and myself, and with the group's concurrence, we really focused on Naval Station Norfolk as well as NSA Hampton Roads, but with NSN being the main focus. In terms of the density of the population, with roughly 78,000 plus people here on Naval Station Norfolk on any given day, the geography, the industrial nature, and what I mean is the very built up nature of it, makes it the place really to focus on mass transportation. With issues at Yorktown, Oceana, all have issues, but Naval Station Norfolk tends to be the driving one with the most urgent need that can affect the overall region. And as Bob has already gone to the recommendations, we can go to the next slide, please. So step one for us that we really feel is necessary is first we've got to get a better sense of where we are in terms of our population, their needs, and what we can do to address this. Understanding that we can't solve all the problems tomorrow or even in the near future, but really if we bring mass transportation to the base, are people going to use it? Is that investment going to be a wise choice? What are they going to want in terms of that 15-minute? Is that going to meet the needs, the hours? For everyone's benefit here, we had a lot of discussion about the fact that it's not a 9-to-5 job here. It's there's a 24/7 requirement. Yes, there's peaks that start almost at 4 a.m. and go to about 1900 at night, but there's constantly people coming in and out throughout the day. And we need to understand that better by doing a very short and focused survey so that we can understand the needs of the workforce and have an idea of how we should proceed. With that, we've reached out to various people and we think we should proceed with this fairly quickly. I can facilitate actually pushing it out to the base once we have it, but we're looking for the expertise of the people who actually work in transportation to help us build that survey out. Next slide, please. With that, what we envision our biggest problem is even if you build light rail right to the gate, we have a problem of how do we actually then disperse that population. So we've got the exact opposite of, park and ride, you put your car there, then you get on transportation. It doesn't work if you then get off transportation, you have a 5-mile walk to your place of business. So there's an urgent need, we believe, to make this successful. So we've got to figure out a viable internal circulator to actually make this a viable concept. For those not as familiar with Naval Station Norfolk, it is a large base, almost 7 miles across. The destinations that are high traffic are spread out, and we don't have a current circulator. There was one decades ago, and in terms of DoD budgeting, it's just really not a viable option anymore. We do not have the ability or the funding with everything else that we have to maintain to put into that type of option. So the money and the solution will not come from DoD. Other ideas were explored, such as scooters, bike riding, and stuff like that. Scooters are not an option, and typically bikes don't be personnel, but there's a lot of whether shipyard workers, whether house cleaners, whether people who are a little older in age or not in the condition that hopefully our sailors are in, that it really wouldn't be an option to say, hey, now get on a bike and ride 5 or 10 miles across space. And the goal here really to find funding to support a pilot program. It would, from our perspective at least, it makes more sense for us to figure out this internal circulator, even on a limited scale. Maybe we use in some regard on this base, so that we figure out that this is a viable transit option that people can use to get around base and that they're going to use before we invest in the tens of millions or the exceptional cost for light rail or other bus routes, high capacity bus routes to come to the base. We need to ensure that the population is going to use it and it's going to be a viable option, and we can work that out in the short term before we have those options in place. Next slide. With that, other things to be considered, I think the last group did an excellent job of talking to. We felt that rideshare was an incredible idea, that we had some of the same ideas that you took to another level. We still ran into problems that even with rideshare, we get everyone to base, them using mass transit, and I still need the ability to have them utilize the internal circulator. I still have to have a way of getting them around base. We did look at, there are places on base that we could possibly have people put their car and even have the internal circulator go there, i.e. they drive into the base and then we utilize the internal circulator, kind of in an opposite ride share. But in terms of ride share, we thought that was a viable idea. We still need the end destination transportation that the internal circulator would provide. And with that, that's all of our recommendations. I'll turn it over to the rest of the group first for any comments from them and my part there. Thank you.
Captain Snyder, anything you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, I think Dee did a great job highlighting that. What the one thing I would say, we didn't cover it in the slides, is, we got a good presentation on these dedicated bus lane option as an alternate to light rail, and I thought that that was a very interesting point. Not something that's a short-term actionable thing that should fall out of our this level or juncture in our working group, but definitely I thought was a very interesting option, potentially more cost-effective than some of the light rail options that we've all been talking about, or people have been discussing. So I thought that was a very interesting brief that we had regarding that topic.
Thank you, Captain Snyder. Amy, anything? Amy, I know you were great help to this group, you and William. Amy, anything you wanted to add?
No, I think we've had this conversation going on now for quite a while. So I know this is no easy problem to solve in terms of how we really make those connections onto the base and that circulation. So, I know this is really a regional issue, and I think we are going to have to look for regional solutions on this. And certainly what we can do, from the city of Norfolk, we're willing to do that, absolutely. And we're going to make our first step in providing frequent service throughout the city that will make it easier for people to access the base. But we are going to need that internal circulator to complete those trips.
So RTAP membership, could I open it up and see if you have any questions for this work group? Thoughts on their ideas?
Hey, this is Bill Crow. Just having been in the base business and having been XO at Naval Station, then CO over at Little Creek. When I was XO at the Naval Station, matter of fact, we did a massive study through NAVFAC, put together the best way to get cars in, to, and out. And as you said, Captain, I can't agree with you more that you've got a teeny weeny postage stamp right down at the end that goes absolutely nowhere, that everybody's coming to between 6 and 8 in the morning, 6 and 8:30 in the morning, and usually between 3 and 4:30 or 5 going home, which is when, of course, we see the most traffic from out there. But I guess my question would be, are we looking at, if we do this, what type of security? I don't know where we are with ATFP and getting on the base with buses. Are they allowed to get on base? Are they not allowed? Or would be that people would have to be dumped off, show their ID, walk across the base, or something like that? Because that was a big problem for us when we started this way back a long time ago, when John Paul Jones and I were shipmates.
Sure. ATFP requirements have grown, not shrunk. We have buses that come on base. We have to figure out the right way to do it. Everything's doable. There might be, we're checking IDs on the bus, and are we putting in the transfer point inside the base or not? I mean, we've got a lot of ideas. We haven't solved them specifically until we actually have a viable plan for how do we work the circulator. But we already have buses that currently come on base.
Zach Trogdon, I saw your chat message there. Do you want to touch on that idea?
No, I don't really have a whole lot to add. Just throwing that one out, I guess, if we're moving that direction in terms of some autonomous vehicles, which certainly seem to be a future consideration.
So one of the things we could do, two major recommendations here. Our staff certainly could jump in and take the lead in coordinating that survey, Captain Dees, working with you and on the base of your personnel. That's something I think we can move on. And then William, I'm just wondering, do you know, or maybe it's something to put on our list to think about coordination and collaboration between all of us on whether or not we couldn't find some pilot funding to test a circulator. Do you think that's a possibility, William? I don't know if the money's there now, but it could be something we could watch for.
Well, we certainly would be very open to looking for that. I know as we have, done our work, and Mr. Amoruso can speak to it as well, looking at the circulator, we recognize that in order for transit to be a true viable option, you've got to have that circulator in place. So I know there's been some pre-work as we're looking at the the eastern corridor to serve Naval Station Norfolk. So, Mr. Amoruso, do you want to add anything on that?
So thank you, Mr. Harrell. So I was also part of the subcommittee meeting, and we did discuss about unique opportunities seem to be flowing from the state, from VDRPT, for funding either demonstrations or pilots. So we'll actively be looking for money to do that and then work with the Navy. The operators that operate circulators on base have to be cleared by the Navy Pass Office. We have a small workforce that is cleared today, so that'll be unique. And then the biggest challenge will be the meet point where the internal circulator, which doesn't leave the base, meets the connection point to the world of transit outside of the gate, and how the people move, the civilian and military personnel working on the base move back and forth in a secure manner. So, but that's something that I told the subcommittee we would work on identifying funding potentially for it.
Any other questions or comments from anyone?
Hey, Bob, just one more thing. One of the things that you brought up, and again, for the two 206s that are out there, having lived your life, one of the things that you made the suggestion on is that when it comes down to doing a lot of things with regards to it, and wearing the uniform and being in the military, and Brian, you can certainly attest to this, is you've usually got to run that up the legal chain, or you got to get more permission than God in regards to doing anything. So the reason that I bring that up for both of you all is that, I think as we move forward in this, the civilian sector and outside the gate, and William, all of us lead the charge on this, and please use the people that are in uniform that live at those bases every day and have to deal with the traffic to, use them as a sounding board to see if it makes sense. And then, when it's necessary, solicit their support, as you said, with the survey and things like that, because I don't think there'd be a problem. But I just want to, excuse me, I want to make sure that, having lived the life and worn the uniform, we don't expect, okay, the Navy's going to be doing all this, because the Navy is, it's got to be very benign in regards to anything that would endorse and go out and support in regards to it, although we all understand the traffic thing. So again, try and take care of you 206s out there.
Thank you, Bill. Gary Harris, did I see you come off mute? Did you want to add anything, sir?
Yeah, I was typing in the chat, so I'm going to go ahead and read what I'm saying in the chat here. I said that I heard our fine military CEOs say that funding may be an issue. So my question was, hey, if we're looking for drivers and support systems for providing an economic basis and justification for transportation-related expenses to support such projects, would not the reductions in CO2 emission sources provide a basis for funding and financial support, since the Biden administration focus on emissions reductions is huge and significant?
Well, I think certainly that's something that I know our team and Williams' team continues to monitor. You know, we're very encouraged by some of the approaches the new administration is looking at taking. Mr. Harris, we think that CO2 reductions and different modes of transportation and sustainability approaches could be a major part of this upcoming federal infrastructure package.
Exactly. Yeah.
This could be that opportunity to say, could we get a pilot to take a look at a circulator? So I think we're very consistent. Would you say, William, for how what we're thinking and what we're going to be looking towards?
Oh, absolutely. And I think rolling in the environmental benefits to a shuttle and other appropriate mechanisms makes sense to help justify the pilot funding. So that fits Mr. Harris precisely in what Bob and I will look to do. Thank you.
Great. Because if you're looking to do a cost benefit analysis, those co-benefits need to be in the analysis as well.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Any other RTAP members with questions or comments? Ideas? Captain Dees, Captain Snyder, I tell you, I just saw the help of myself, Rick Dwyer and Amy Inman. We appreciate the time that you gave on these work groups. I know what your schedule's got to be like. I can't imagine what your schedules are like. But to both of you, I just can't thank you enough for your participation and involvement. Is there anything that you want to leave us with in terms of final comments?
No, it's been our pleasure, at least my pleasure. I know it's our pleasure, and we look forward to working with you and the entire team arranged here in the future.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, I'll say the same. It's great. It's good to get engagement. I'll be honest, with the COVID stuff starting to wind down a little bit, getting back and engaged with the community is a priority that many of the bases are starting to look at, and this is a great opportunity to do that. So greatly appreciate the seat at the table here as well too. So it's a lot of fun.
Well, thank you both. So let's our final group for today, our affordable accessible housing group. I believe I know that some had some deadlines to move on to, but I want to pause and see if they're available with us today to be able to give their report up. Anybody from our housing group? So I know that some of them had some appointments to run on to. So I'm going to pause there and say those will be our two report outs for today then. As you can see, they took a half an hour each, but I think they're important to take that much time to have the right conversation about those ideas. Jeff Erliski, I know you were working with that group. Am I missing any of the housing people that are on the line?
I'm going through down the list here. I'm not seeing immediately.
Hello, everyone.
Oh, hi.
Hi. I was thinking that Gretchen was going to have our PowerPoint or something together, but I'm happy to step in. We don't have a PowerPoint, but I do just have some notes from our meeting from a couple weeks ago.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you.
Of course, of course. So it'll be all my voice. So I'm so sorry if I sound a little nasally. So in the affordable housing work group, we were really focused on kind of the first issue was connecting our community members with what it means to have affordable housing and how it relates to a living wage, thinking about how affordable housing is calculated, what it means to say, what are the factors that determine how much of a house I can afford, monthly income, any kind of savings, your expenses, and also your credit. All of these things go into housing affordability. If any of you all have seen any of the recent eviction rates that have come out over the past few years, Hampton Roads unfortunately sits atop that list with about 6 different cities in Hampton Roads that had the highest eviction rates. So we really do have what is called or considered an urban housing crisis here, and typically what is Southeastern Virginia. And then of course, 30% of your rent is calculated by dividing your annual gross income by 40. And we're looking as far as our goals and kind of what our report outs would be. We need to do a lot, a lot very quickly in Hampton Roads to really work around the affordable housing and the kind of urban housing crisis issue. So the solution should include the total picture with both sociologists, urban planners, human services organizations, of course, our landlords, any kind of private rental companies, our property managers, planning departments, and also thinking about how really saving and investing in affordable housing today can really save a lot of money in what it costs to house homeless people, what it costs to educate students that have been transient for most of their lives. Really investing on the front end can save us a lot of money on the back end there. And really as that relates to transportation and what we're trying to do with RTAP, of course, is also thinking about the fact that transportation is a huge part of housing costs as well, that we don't always consider as a part of what it means to have affordable housing. So we talked about a little bit earlier in the presentation, folks that are living in Suffolk, but having to go 2 hours into Virginia Beach sometimes. That is all a part and a piece of what we're talking about, what it means to really solve the affordable housing crisis. If you talk to folks that are in, nonprofit circles like myself, the food bank has this really great line, as opposed to just feeding the line, we want to end the line. Our mission here at 4Kids is to end the cycle of poverty and homelessness, and a huge piece that will allow us to accomplish that and to be able to do that is by making sure that we're working with all of our external partners. We're talking to different organizations and agencies and companies about what it means to offer a living wage, to be flexible with your employees when they might be late on the bus, what it means to say, we're being flexible about childcare when those situations come up. I think the pandemic has taught us all in a lot of ways that for a lot of us, yes, it was inconvenient, but for folks that are living close to or under the poverty line, the pandemic devastated them. It was devastating for them when it came to having to get to work and care for the kids and also pay your expenses. All of these different things really add to what we're considering an affordable living wage for our folks here in Hampton Roads, and how we're going to be able to really solve the housing crisis.
Great, thanks, Zakaya. Any questions or comments?
Yes, this is William Harrell. I just want to thank Ms. Anderson for her feedback. One of the challenges that we've had, and we've shared this publicly, is hiring bus operators and mechanics, and we're about to enter into union negotiations. We have a transit union that we deal with, and we're looking at getting wages up so that we can be more competitive in the marketplace. But not only that, some of the points that you made, Ms. Anderson, we are looking for the first time at perhaps partnering with a daycare center, because as new operators, the way the current system is operated by the union, when there's overtime, it's the newbies, if you will, who are new on the job, who have to put in overtime before the senior operators do. So if you have single mothers or fathers that are taking care of kids and the long periods that are required for our routes, it makes it a very difficult job decision. And in some cases, we're finding that we lose people in the first year, certainly within the first 2 years. And a lot of times it has to do with work-life balance. So what we're looking to do is to see if we can partner with a daycare agency, so that if somebody has to work a little late, they don't have to perhaps pay additional fees, and have some support, if they don't have family and other support that can help out. So you're absolutely right. It's a very complicated issue. Bringing quality people to the table is going to be really important, and it addresses the the wages, and all of those intangibles that impact the quality of life. So we're looking at those issues. In the past, we've been more focused on compensation, but we understand the issue is much broader than that.
I'm sorry, Zakiya, you're on mute. You're on mute.
I've had to practice for this for years, haven't I? But I think that's really great. I think it is fantastic, and it's really going to take, different agencies getting creative. I think we have learned over this past year that we're having to have a lot more grace as people with our neighbors and our community members, but also what can we do as a community, our Hampton Roads Chamber, our folks that are business owners, what does it mean to say, okay, maybe I can't have you, be of course an hour late and I can't really excuse that, but what are some ways we can do different workarounds, different partnerships with local daycare centers? What are the things that we can do to make sure? And, you talked about it, Mr. Harrell, as, losing people in the first year, but even prior to that, you're probably losing lots of applicants who are saying, yes, I would love to do that, but do these hours work for my schedule, for my family? Is there, for folks that are in office or administrative jobs, is there an opportunity for work from home flexibility? These different things that are, like we said, the quality of life and adding to, yes, I can technically afford my rent and my mortgage and maybe my gas, to and from, my job. But the other pieces of what we do every day to survive aren't counted into the federal poverty rate, And so thinking about what it means to have a living wage is counting expenses, hospital trips, all those different things that historically we haven't thought about when it comes to calculating poverty. But being open as just people that are change agents in the community and in this region to what it means to kind of expand our thoughts on what poverty looks like. It's not just a person on the side of Hampton Boulevard that's asking you for money. More than often, it is folks that are living and working 2 and 3 jobs sometimes that are still technically in poverty as well. So thank you all.
Thank you. Other conversations, questions, comments?
Bob, if I could jump in.
Yes, please.
One other thing I think the group was really excited about was the opportunity to work with the member cities that, as Zakiya went through, of the scope and of the issue that, going back on my Norfolk experience, when a development proposal comes in, there's a checklist of, is this in a CBD area? What's the AQ zone? You're just very going down that list, and the opportunity to then have, people say, is this close to a backbound road? Is this well served by transit? And if so, are there opportunities to have discussions around affordable housing in terms of a percentage of a project, some other incentives or what have you? But to make that, as part of the DNA of just day-to-day business in each of the cities, that the scope of the problem is so huge to have everybody involved at least thinking of this. You may come to the decision, no, this one's too small, it's too remote or what have you, but to at least have that check off and as part of a standardized process, as the backbone becomes something well known. I think the group really wanted to put forward and get people to think about.
Thank you, Jeff. Other comments, discussion points?
Yeah, I have one question. So,
yes.
As the cost of development continues to spike, as we see it now, 2x4 has gone up from about $5 to like $11. So does that mean that affordable housing is being pushed out further and further away from routes currently served by public transit? And if so, I guess, Mr. Harrell, have you guys looked down the road in the future as to how affordable housing and the availability of affordable housing and the people that live there will be able to access the routes? And is there any conversation about replanning your route schedule to push them further out to where these communities are?
Well, one of the things that we're pretty proud of, and Mr. Amaruso, I'm singing his praises today and every day. Our planning department, with some consulting support and other internal resources, takes us through a pretty comprehensive process each and every year, where we update our strategic plans, and it's a multi-tiered basis. In addition to that, we work very closely with member cities to ensure that we know where new developments are occurring. What Mr. Relisky said, I don't want us to miss it. When it comes to transit-oriented development, when it comes to densities, when it comes to parking requirements, encouraging people to use transit, that is completely out of our hands and is controlled by the 6 member cities that are part of Hampton Roads Transit. So it's got to be a partnership and a shared vision for, what transit can be in a new environment. I think one of the reasons why there's so many parking garages and what have you is that, up until the new dedicated funding, we've been locked into a situation where, a lot of routes are 60 minutes and 30 minutes. And for a lot of individuals, transit is not a viable choice today. With the dedicated funding, for the first time, and it's not coming in 1 year. I mean, it's going to take us 3 full years to get it fully implemented. We are purchasing new buses. We got to hire those new operators, you name it. So there's a lot of work that has to be done. But when you look out 5 years, when you look out 10 years, I think there's a real opportunity for us to have a very different transit system that I think really will open the door to choice riders. And I don't want to forget those transit dependent. I want all the new riders we can get, but at the same time, I want us to also be supportive of making sure we provide better service to those who are transit dependent. So it's a very complicated equation. I think, working with Mr. Relisky and the member cities, I think, that's where the focus has to be in terms of making sure that affordable housing is supported by public transit.
And if I may really quickly, I think, with city developments and planning, of course, the idea is you're doing this for the community. You're doing it for the people that live there, but it gets lost in translation through the red tape, through the construction, through the people that you have to go through the different contracts. And I think just as a general rule, keeping the people first in all that we're thinking about in terms of transportation, in terms of building developments, in terms of building new epicenters, or, the piece about how our hospitals are epicenters, in the EVMS ODU area, keeping that first in our train of thought is going to be essential. And if we can keep that, that's why we had on our presentation, putting sociologists and other people that don't necessarily have the business acumen, in those groups and in that planning, keeping folks that are people centered, also involved in the planning of these different developments and different, megaplexes or whatever we want to call them. Keeping the people first mindset in what we're doing is going to be really essential.
The other piece, Bob, if I could just say very briefly, that's part of the strategic plan is we are introducing what we call micro transit, where it could be a taxi, it could be a Uber that provides transit from your doorstep to a transit point of the backbone system. So Virginia Beach is part of their operating budget approved micro transit zone. Also Newport News is part of their operating budget approved the zone. So we're going to pilot and see how this works. But we recognize in some cases you may not need a 45-foot bus or a 40-foot bus or a smaller bus, if you will. Smaller vehicles, much like our paratransit service, to get people to key locations where they can pick up your more significant transit routes. So we think that's going to be part of it too, making sure that people have a number of modes and ways to access the system. And, you know, that may address some of the issues, Mr. Woodford, you raised about developments that are a little further from the backbone routes. The other thing is we work very closely with member cities on feeder routes as well. So there's a couple of ways that we can go about making sure that key affordable housing developments can be served by transit.
So I guess, Mr. Harold, so is that a advocacy question that we need to advocate with some of our stakeholders to be more attuned to what's happening with public housing and how it's being pushed further and further away from your backbone routes?
Well, it's probably a good thing that this isn't an in-person meeting. That might be when you get a big hug from me. I don't know if that's appropriate in a COVID environment, but certainly I do think that advocacy from the business community is important. We would not have gotten the dedicated funding if it were not for support of our mayors that were part of the discussions. We had Jim Spoor, Brian Stevens from the chamber, both sides of the water were involved in that. We had co-chairs on both sides. So, you know, the fact that the business community was supportive of improving transit from an economic development standpoint, I think made a big difference. So I think anytime we can have advocacy from the business community, I think that can help move the agenda towards better transit. Thank you, sir.
William, just to follow up on that, I really think once we have these report outs, we're going to see the work of some of these work groups start to line up a bit. Zakaya, I think that some of your thoughts are going to fit in perfectly with our transit-oriented development along the backbone, that work group. Sarah Jane, I know your group's working away, but when you start thinking about advocacy and bringing light on the need to look holistically as we design communities and how that fits into how we move people in relation to where they live and work, you know, there could be an advocacy piece there. So I think there's going to be some overlaps that, you know, just the report outs, I think, are going to show how interconnected so many of these issues are for us.
Hey, Robert.
Yes.
Hey, this is Jason with Senior Services, Mobility Manager. I just wanted to let everyone know as well, we are definitely doing a rehaul of our transportation routes for our seniors in the metro area, which is Virginia Beach, Norfolk, Portsmouth, and also a big emphasis on our western tidewater regions. So we're going to be having new maps coming out as soon as we get new census data. And I'm doing a lot of extensive research to make sure that we get everything taken care of for our seniors. So I definitely, please, anyone that's going to be in transit, please let's connect all together and collaborate together on that, because I definitely want to make sure that our seniors are taken care of and we can save the greatest generation.
Thank you, Jason. And Jason, I assume you're plugged in with Ray and HRT and the Suffolk system, or
so and all this is my second RTAP meeting. Okay. Since being in this position, so I'm still learning faces and getting to know everyone. So I'm getting plugged in. I'm just haven't got fully plugged in yet, but I'm getting there.
Fantastic. Well, I know, you know, just let us know. I know William Ray and his team, you know, will always looking to collaborate. So if we can help with that, Jason, let us know. But thank you for those comments, sir.
Awesome.
So I know I see a few people, by the way, we had 60 people again today. I can't thank you enough for your continued participation. Any more conversation on the housing piece before we wind down for today?
Bob, I just want to mention that I guess from the City of Norfolk's perspective, we absolutely agree with the importance of linking our public transportation and our multimodal transportation. If you take our St. Paul's redevelopment work, We have a whole new road network that's going in that is focused on people. And so we're going to have bike lanes, we're going to have wider sidewalks, we're going to have the land use that's going to support people, as well as having dedicated transit lanes, bus-only lanes that will allow for the buses to go in and out seamlessly into the downtown Norfolk Transfer Center. We have 60-some buses an hour coming in and out of there today. So making sure that the buses and the people can all, work together safely so that we can provide that good, meaningful access into the DNTC. We think that's very important. And we have a $15 million build grant that we were awarded by USDOT. So $30 million total in the investment in transportation and multimodal transportation in that community alone. So as we start to look at redevelopment in what is a built-out city, an old city in Norfolk, we're going to really focus on having integrated multimodal transportation. So, bike facilities, better sidewalks, better connectivity that help to link us into our public transportation.
Great. But perfect example of linking it all together, Amy. Thank you. Any other comments? And Amy, I see you're getting a big yes to wider sidewalks in urban communities in the chat. So.
Yeah, just a quick comment, Bob. On my birthday, I decided to challenge myself to walk 10 miles. I ended up walking 15 miles down to the seawall and back to my home. But along the way, I passed by several HRT bus stops and shelters, et cetera, and just struck up conversations, with the riders, saying, hey, I'm on this advisory group, we're trying to make your ride better. What can we do? So I just kept stopping and getting that ground truthing and that feedback, and that direct touch. So I would like to challenge others, maybe not walk 15 miles, but if you have the opportunity, to have that brief conversation and get that feedback, please do. It ground truths what you do. It brings in the writer perspective. It adds tremendous value to our collective group here. It fine tunes our recommendations, and most importantly, it amplifies that voice that we're trying to serve. So yeah, I challenge you to walk 15 miles, and stop at those stops along the way.
I think that's a wonderful challenge and idea, Gary. Thank you for that. William, after we do our report outs, maybe there's something you and I could coordinate on, later this summer, as I think everybody's getting in good shape with vaccines, that maybe there's something we could do with the RTAP on your bus system. I'll just throw that out there, William. Maybe we could think about that.
Sure, absolutely.
Very good. Any other comments? Although, Gary, I got to say, the only thing I got to tell you is Rob Case, who rides the entire Virginia Capitol Trail, all 52 miles. He's one guy I never take challenges from. I know I can't keep up with talk.
I'm leaving that alone.
I'd struggle with your 15 miles too, Gary. That's awesome. Congratulations.
We're working it.
Yes, sir. But I think excellent points about, like, as you said, ground truth. Understand the needs of who we're trying to help, our residents. I think excellent points. So I'm going to pause there and say, first off, I can't thank everybody enough. The work groups through their report outs, the conversations. We're collecting these thoughts and information. Your dialogue, we'll be putting this together in terms of what this looks like, in terms of overlap. Obviously, William, working with you and your team, Zach and his team, about the art of what's possible and how we might move forward. So we have 6 groups remaining. What I'd like to do is suggest, we were looking at some meetings because we really feel it's so important to do this when the transit agencies can be involved. William, the one day we were looking at, there's some challenges with schedule conflicts. So we're going to work with HRT and WADA and Suffolk, see if we can't find 2 meeting dates in June, okay? And what we're going to plan is 3 report outs at each. Could I ask for a next meeting that might happen, say in that mid-June timeframe? Do we have 3 groups that would be ready to go?
Hey, Bob, I think the bus stop amenities work group should be good to go for that first meeting.
Okay, great, great. Anybody else that wanted to get on the schedule for that next one? If we gave you a couple, 2-3 weeks, you'd be ready to go?
Well, I have to defer to our spokesperson, Sarah Jane. Are we going to be ready?
Sorry, I couldn't find my unmute button. Maybe, possibly, right?
Okay. Well, okay, so you'll want to, why don't I do this? We'll get the date set up and I'll send you out, I'll send you out once we can get those dates squared up. We'll send out, it sounds like bus stop amenities is already ready. I'll find 2 more. but I'm hearing from a couple offline that think that they might be. So let's get those dates scheduled. We're going to plan on 3 the next meeting and then 3 the following. Okay.
Hey, Bob, this is Bill. Will you be doing kind of a doodle poll to figure out when we're available? Because I know June with coming out of COVID and people getting out of school and vacations and all that, may be some conflicts, and just want to make sure you continue with the crowd of 60 that you got here if we can possibly can.
Yeah, we'll do our best on that, Bill. You're right, a lot of moving parts. I don't want to lose the momentum, but we'll do our best to do a doodle poll and see what we can get set up, Bill. Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Bill, for mentioning that. June is going to be really tight for us. We are entering into contract negotiations. Certainly, we'll be able to get 1, maybe 2, but it may have to bleed into July. So I just wanted to let you know ahead of time. But we'll work with the doodle poll and we'll see if we can get those in as quickly as possible.
Awesome. All right.
Hey, Bob, one other thing I'd like to throw in before we quit this conversation is, doesn't everybody on this Zoom chat think that William Harrell ought to be a TV star?
Stop it, Bill. I owe you lunch.
All right. You know, I just never know what to say when Bill Crow wraps up a meeting. I don't have anything after that one, William.
I'm blushing.
Well, William, for the record, we all agree with Bill. So, well, anyway, I just want to stop and say to our work group members, thank you so much. William, I know for you and Zach and Suffolk System, it's always a busy time. We really appreciate you being on this journey with us. To our transit partners, I think there's some great ideas coming out. I really think there's some low-hanging fruit we can move on. And we just look forward to continue to work with you all to try to move the needle on transit. So look for a doodle poll. We're going to get it set up. You know, William, maybe you're right. Maybe 1 meeting in June and 1 in July. And that will get us the next 6 report outs. Okay. So thank you, everybody. Have a safe Memorial Day weekend. And hope everybody is healthy and has a great one. Take care, all.
Thank you.